The South Philadelphia Oil Refinery is shutting down, and Zillow is finally using photos in its estimates. Toole Time's on right now. I'm Tom Toole. She is Jess Lion. This is Toole Time, coming in with a couple interesting pieces of news here. A big development in our local area with the oil refinery. We'll start there. So about a week and a half ago, the South Philly Oil Refinery that's been there since the 1860s caught on fire and now is getting shut down because of a major blast that happened. And they're estimating anywhere from 1,000 to 1,400 employees are going to be laid off. Jess, what do you think about all this?
I think, first, I didn't even hear it. There are a lot of people who, I live in Philadelphia, but I live in North Philadelphia, but there were a lot of people who felt it, heard it, 4 a.m. I guess I'm a pretty heavy sleeper, but I didn't even know it went on, and I drove to work that day, so that was pretty crazy, but there are some major consequences here. I think some positive, a lot of negative, like you said, 1,000 people being laid off, one of the biggest oil refineries on the eastern seaboard. What is this going to do to Philadelphia, our economy? And I think from reading the article, they are going to put some, programs in place to help out the employees there and really see what the impact could be there. Some positives, I've read another article talking about if they do shut down, what are the potential, what could they do with the land? Could they possibly build there? Which makes me kind of nervous, though, what's going on with the soil? Can they even build there? I'm sure they're doing a bunch of testing and investigations as to if they could. But, I think that from reading the article, it's something that the company, the CEO, is really going to have to sit down and look at, and I'm sure they are. And I was reading through the article, and I think some people were concerned that they were making too much of a fast decision to close it down right away and not really looking at the impact, but obviously they're going to sit down and take this into consideration. But I think that it's going to have a huge impact on our city, but if we can convert the land, if it's safe, maybe it could be a new chapter.
The people in South Philadelphia are really fortunate this wasn't a bigger disaster. This refinery's been operating since the 1860s, but the EPA hasn't been around until the 1970s. So there's no controls over this. Fossil fuels in general, there's been a lot of issues with how they were run, pollution, all that sort of stuff. So I do see an opportunity here. Carl Dranoff, major developer in Philadelphia, just did One Ardmore Square, which is another controversial development. He started his career by repurposing industrial buildings, so obviously a pretty unique opportunity. Where this is located, if you don't know the city, it's basically between South Philly and University City. Mm-hmm. So if you're on 76, probably not moving because it's possibly the worst highway in the entire country, at least maybe because I've had to drive it so much. It's all right there kind of in that no man's land, but there's a disconnect in the city because you have South Philadelphia, which is pretty robust with development and activity. Then you have University City, which has University of Pennsylvania, Drexel. They're pouring a lot of money into development there as well. So you have this kind of no man's land. So there really is an opportunity here to reinvent the city where this really doesn't happen too often. It's not like you have all this land and this is by the Navy Yard and some other places, so there really is a once-in-a-generation kind of development opportunity here, which is great. Really the bigger concern is, obviously, you talked about the environmental hazards, so they're going to have to do a Phase 1 environmental, probably a little more deeper in that. If you don't know what that is, that's when a commercial development or any sort of development happens, and they make sure there's not any environmental hazards, which I would bet they are. I have no information on this, but knowing there's an 1860s oil refinery in the middle of one of the 5 or 6 largest cities in the country, probably going to have some issues there. And it's 3,700 acres that runs along both sides of the river. So, really, I see this as a big opportunity for the city. I don't know what they're going to do with it. When you think about it, an oil refinery in a large city like Philadelphia is pretty unusual. So the jobs is tough. That's a hard thing here. The fact they have programs for the workers is really important. I was getting text messages at 5 in the morning, hey, what's going on? Are you someone asked me if I was okay, and I don't think they knew exactly where I live, but there was people that I know, like all over the country. They were wondering what was going on.
That's crazy.
There was a Facebook post in the 5 a.m. call, someone asking me that, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I live right outside the city, but not in the city. So this was big news.
We're really lucky that everybody was not too injured. I think like 5 people were injured. But
what if the explosion was worse?
Yeah,
what if it
exactly.
caught on fire? I mean, to look at wildfires in California. I mean, this is, the climate conditions are very different here. But this really shook the city last week. I mean, you look at what they know about the shutdown is that there was substantial damage to the facility. CEO of Philadelphia Energy Solutions, Mark Smith, they had to decide to shut down the refinery. They said it was difficult. I don't see how it's a difficult decision. If they're catching on fire in the middle of a city, this has got to be closed. And these things it's an old refinery. It's an old place where it's not built up to today's standards. I'm sure it even wouldn't even pass code. So we're fortunate it wasn't worse. That's
Very
really my
fortunate.
take on this. And knowing they're going to do an investigation. Like you said, 5 employees were injured, and whatever happens from the investigation, I doubt we're going to see anything like that build again here. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. This is a lot like the Navy Yard when they redeveloped that.
There were, and like I said, I'm so happy that everyone was safe. I mean, not as many people got hurt, or like we said, it could have been worse. Immediately, there were memes out. Have you seen the show Chernobyl? You really don't see too many shows.
I know what the show is.
Yeah, well, Rich was like, "Oh my God, this is Chernobyl," and then I saw all these memes on Facebook.
That would require it to be nuclear power, by
yes,
the way.
I know, but they were like, there was tons of memes going out there saying like John Noble, like Philly John and John Noble. It was just really funny, but like making light of the situation. But it is very heavy, and I'm glad a lot of people weren't hurt. But
there's real opportunity here. I mean, I don't see how you reopen something like that in a major city. I mean, it's got to go somewhere more rural. I mean, even the people in Limerick get nervous about the nuclear power plant there. What if something goes wrong there? So these things are not designed to be around where people live, period. Yeah. So we live in an old city. So Dranoff's got it right. I like what he has to say. This is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change the city in a place that's already changed a lot over the past 20 years. So pretty exciting there. Obviously, the jobs are a concern, and I'm glad there's a program in place there. I'm also worried about the safety of all the people living around there, which is far more than the job loss.
Exactly.
So, Zillow, our favorite topic here, but they're making a lot of news. So, news came out last week that their estimate is now going to use photos when valuing homes, and what they're going to do specifically is. It's considered to be a smarter, more accurate tool, and that's the Zestimate. So the way they come up with numbers, that they can see the features such as curb appeal, natural lighting, and finishes. And they're claiming they're going to use some AI, machine learning, all those sort of things. Mm-hmm. What do you think about all this, Jess?
So now, reading through the article, this one specifically, they're going to factor in things such as, quality of the upgrades, what types of upgrades they did, things like curb appeal, things that you can really, like they said something that you'd be able to notice, like a human would be able to notice through a picture or something like that. And while I think that's awesome and it's a great step forward, I feel like curb appeal, and the types of upgrades and things like that, it's very subjective. That some people may like the look of one house and some people may not like the look of another house. So I do think it's very subjective, and it would be interesting to see how that would factor into the Zestimate. With that being said, I think now their error rate is like less than 2%.
They're claiming it's less than 2%.
Claiming it's less than 2%, which is, I think it's a good starting point to see, okay, maybe it's worth this. Let me call my local professional and see if that's really the case or something like that. But, it's a good starting point.
It's about damn time they started using photos. This, to me, was such a crazy thing. They only looked at the public records data, which is wrong sometimes. Mm-hmm. What I know is one of the reasons why a great home will not sell is the photos suck, period. I mean, you see agents taking iPhone photos all the time because they're lazy or they don't want to make the investment, and that hurts the sale of a property. So obviously it's going to hurt the estimate, or the Zestimate in this case. There is no question that knowing if a home has like an updated kitchen, updated bathrooms, I mean, you can tell from the outside if the place needs work or not. So that should be factored in, because when you look at the 4 factors that buyers consider, when they purchase a home. They look at the price, the location, the condition, and the floor plan. Floor plan, tough to tell until you get in there. Location, obviously some homes sell for more literally on like the other side of a street than others if there's like a golf course behind it or there's a busy road or something like that. Then you have condition, obvious one, and that affects price. So condition and price have a direct correlation. If they're ever going to get this right, had to use photos. There's tons of photos out there all the time, especially the homes that sell. The ones that don't sell, that's where it's tough, where the buyer's been in, or the owner's been in there, for 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. But there's homes that will sell 3 or 4 times in a 10, 15-year period. Why are you not using photos?
Yeah.
That's such an obvious thing. And if people want a better estimate, maybe they better hire a better agent who's going to use professional photos instead of fall for these guys that don't want to make the investment, or women, men or women, not excluding anyone here because there's bad agents on both sides, where they don't make the investment in the right photography. That to me is such a misstep in the marketplace right now.
Absolutely. But I think this is the right step for Zillow, and they're just getting better and better.
So they're getting better. Obviously, that's going to improve with technology, just like everything else in real estate right now. So I'm glad to see, for the benefit of homeowners, because a lot of people just go on there to get a feel for what their number is. They're not going to sell. Obviously, it's still up to the local agent. I'd like to see the data behind a 2% margin of error. That's pretty interesting to me when they don't have photos of all these homes. So we'll have to put an asterisk next to that one for now.
Okay. Well, into the, positive quote, we're going to do something a little bit different. And instead of a quote, we're just going to talk about a topic that I have been thinking about for the past week or so and been hearing about on podcasts, or that I've been reading about. And this week's topic would be truth. So I've been hearing a lot of people like Gary Vee, Rachel Hollis, Tom Ferry talk about living your truth. The truth will set you free. So I wanted to get your take on your concept of self-truth, being honest with yourself. What does that mean to you, and how does it impact your life?
So being honest with myself, how that impacts my life. Well, what I know is this, Jess, and I'll be very clear with you on this one, is that when it comes to being honest with yourself, that's the first person you got to be honest with. So if you're having a challenge in your life somewhere where you're not losing weight, or you feel like you need to improve your relationship, or whatever that is, it's got to start with you and then kind of roll downhill from there. Because if you're not going to address that, you're avoiding it, and when you avoid it, it doesn't get dealt with, and that creates problems. So there is no question to me that you've got to be honest with yourself first, and then you can really be honest with other people. Because if you're BSing people or saying one thing, doing the other, it just, people are going to sniff that out, and then there's a lack of authenticity there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately and just hearing it through all the podcasts, like I said. But when it comes to self-realization, self-truth, that's when you can be honest with yourself. Like you said, that's when you can say, okay, I might be lacking in this area, so I can work on it, or I'm really great at that, so I'm going to double down on it. So I think that really being honest with yourself, not lying to yourself, knowing what you can and cannot do, is really where you can start to implement change, which is why I think it's really important to be always first honest with yourself. So I think I like that topic.
If you're not going to be honest with yourself, then, you're not going to be honest with anybody else.
Yeah.
There's no one to hold you accountable but yourself here. And that's where it's like internal and external accountability, right?
Yeah.
So external is when you're doing it for somebody else, and that's never the right reason to do it. It's got to start with you. So if you want to, improve your health or your these are just easy things to use. But if there's something else you want to work on, like you want to learn more or grow more, well, you got to do something about it. You can't just sit around and say, I really want to do this and daydream all the time. Yeah. It's not going to get you anywhere.
Absolutely.
Cool. Is that all we got? This was I had no idea what was going on here, and they said they were going to surprise me. I'm not. I guess this is my surprise face. But we'll be back next week. Thanks for watching, everybody.